again. We'll do the intros in a second again here. Can both of you just
We just want to test. We're testing. Hello,
yeah,
everyone.
Yeah, we
testing
just want to
again
see
with
if we
the
can be
intros in
heard.
a
Let us
second
know in the
again
chat
here.
if you can hear us, everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is it only me still? Because if it is, this
So,
is. I'm not sure what the issue is then.
Yeah.
Okay.
mm.
Oh wait. Steph gave a thumbs up. Does that mean everything's good, Steph?
No, I think that was from before.
Nah.
Maybe.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
Let's see. If
Oh no.
anybody's in the for the folks in the chat, if you can just let us know if you can hear Marie and Christina. If you just both of you just say hi again. All right, it
She
works.
says it works. It works.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
everyone.
So
Okay, great.
ignore everything that happened in the last 60 seconds. I think it's just a software thing. I literally just restarted the streaming software and it kicked in. Christina will edit this on the YouTube and it'll be like none of this ever happened. All right, let's kickstart it again. Okay, and I can get my I can get my intro right this time too.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there we go. So, all right, Thanos.
Let's see.
All right. Welcome back to the dev stream. My name is Nick Taylor. I'm a lead software engineer at Forum. Forum is a software that powers dev.
And I'm Christina Gorton. I'm the open source community manager at Forum, and we have Marie Mosley here today from CodePen, which we're going to talk about more in just a minute, but we're going to let Marie introduce herself first.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I am the Marie from CodePen. I'm the I guess you could say I'm the community manager over there. I wear a lot of hats. We're a tiny team, so everybody wears a lot of hats, and I'm a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. So, I do everything but front end stuff. I don't do anything on the front end, even though CodePen is a front end development environment. I have not made a pen that wasn't just like a console log test in I don't know how long, honestly, but all the behind the scenes type of stuff, community. I've also been working with data lately. I've been writing a lot of SQL, which I apparently should have been doing from the beginning because I just love it.
Nice.
And I run the challenges. I'm the editor of the Spark, so all of the picks that go into the Spark are my choices, and I run the Spark, the newsletter. Also, I do a lot of the picking just in general. So that's a lot of what I do, but there's a lot of other stuff too. So
yeah, and it's a pretty large community as well. Like I don't know what numbers or if that's something you disclose or not, but like I feel like anybody that does front end definitely has at a minimum an account there. Like I know there's different tiers of accounts and stuff, but I'm always seeing people posting CodePens all the time. Like also what my Twitter feed is more
there's a
front end centric, but
oh, cool, nice. So you were front end dev also?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Nick is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nick. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and so I was.
So yeah,
go ahead, Marie.
We do
go
have.
ahead, Marie.
Oh, I was going to say we do have a free tier, so we have lots and lots of folks using that and creating really cool work. But we also have pro plans that just unlock some more features, and so we do have kind of like two groups within the community: free members and then also pro members. But realistically, the community at large is everybody. So everybody gets picked. Everybody can get into the trending feed. All of that.
Yeah, definitely, and we can talk about that more in just a minute and how all that works. And I'm a pro member, have been for a while. We can talk about what that means too. I remember talking to Chris Goyer once in an email, and he was just like, "Yeah, people don't really understand what's the pro," and I was like, "Yeah, you should put that out there more and tell people what the pro stuff is."
I know.
We can definitely.
We're always working on it. Yeah.
But yeah, before when the audio wasn't working, I did talk up Marie a little bit here, and so I should say again that Marie, she said that she might be the community. She's definitely an integral part of the community and keeping the community around CodePen just lively. As a newer community manager, I definitely look up to her in that. And like I said to her just a little bit ago, that she was integral in helping me like find a job because she was so good at curating the people on CodePen. When they put their pins there, she picks pins, which means if you have a CodePen on there, they kind of have this the the front page there where they'll pick pins, and you can see kind of the ones, not even like the most popular ones, just the ones that like different people think are interesting, like Marie thinks is interesting, and she will put those on. And then just so excited every time I got into CodePen Spark, I'd just be like, yes. I would tell my husband, he'd be like, really, Chrissy, again? And I'm like, yes.
So you're doing good work. That's how it began. Yeah.
So all these things are just like, really, really awesome that she helps curate and do. And so we'll talk more about these things. But we tried to ask Marie this just a minute ago before the audio was a little messed up. Marie was number one at CodePen. She's the first employee. And so we kind of want to talk about how she got into tech and how she got to CodePen and all those wonderful things.
Yeah, sure. So how I got into tech is a long story, but I don't know, it might be interesting. So in the late 90s, there was a thing that we can look back on as the e-commerce boom. I was a kid then. I was, in college. And my mom had a business that she wanted to put online. And I'm like, okay, let's figure this out, So I actually left school and just spent time putting together the website that she wanted to build for her store. I learned, this dates me, but I learned RTML, which was Yahoo Store's original programming language, which is the weirdest programming language, like basically in the whole world. And so I learned how to work with that and to edit the store in ways that made it work for my mom in terms of like the front end of the store. And so that's where I started to get interested in things like HTML and CSS, because even though RTML was not really even related to HTML, it was making HTML elements on the page. So, it compiled down to HTML. So I wanted to learn how to like actually make these things work the way we wanted to do it. We wanted to customize things, change the appearance of the site. So that's how I started to dig in.
Okay.
And so that's my very beginning origin story. And this is like, like .com bubble era, so it's like a long time ago, So I did that for many years. And then I took time off to have my son. And then I just didn't work for a while because I was raising a little kid. And then the crash of 2008 occurred, and then there was like nothing. So I was like, well, this is really not a great time to try to re-enter the workforce. Let me try freelancing. Let me try to learn something new and try freelancing. So that's when I started digging into more advanced things. Like, I started to learn WordPress at that point. And from learning WordPress, I was able to start freelancing, and I started to work on like lifestyle blogs in the early lifestyle blog days, which was really, really, really fun. Like wedding blogs and mommy blogs and all that type of stuff. It was a really, really fun time. It was great to work with the clients because they were interesting people. The projects were interesting. The projects were fun and colorful, really beautiful sites, so it was really fun to do. And in tandem with that, I started to blog, and I had a blog for 4 years, maybe a little bit longer. I can't remember now. The pandemic has completely like destroyed my ability to recall how long things have taken, but so I started blogging, and I had a blog called Code It Pretty. It's still online. It's just, dormant now, but I would show people how to modify their own blogs, and I focused up on the Blogger platform because it was free and super easy for people to jump into. And so like I made things like before they had a widget, I made a gadget for Blogger for Pinterest, so you could see like people's pins and stuff like that. And that really took off, and that like got big, and then I started like getting more clients and sort of having more people to work with, and just continued blogging. All the while I was learning from CSS Tricks how to do stuff. Like that Chris Coyer's CSS Tricks, his blog, which if you do front end stuff, you probably know that even more likely than CodePen is CSS Tricks. It's fundamental to the front end community, And so I was learning from Chris's website and reading all the time, and he eventually introduced this thing that he was working on called CodePen. And I was like, this is cool. It had this embed feature that it launched with where you could actually take code from CodePen and put it right onto your blog and you could show people like, here's a code sample, and you can, take this code sample and work from it. And I'm like, this is the best thing. This is like the perfect thing for my blog. So I signed up for CodePen, and I'm in the first 1,000 people that joined CodePen. So like I was like, I just jumped right on it, And so, so I get in there and I started using it on my blog, and I'm like, this is just really cool. So I was listening to CodePen Radio. I was also, Chris eventually made a job listing where he wanted someone to work on CSS tricks to help him with writing. It was like the almanac and just posts on CSS tricks. And I'm like, well, this is awesome. I've been writing my blog for a long time. I'd like to take a crack at it. So I applied, and Chris hired me. And Chris hired me, and then I immediately went into the hospital for 9 days. So like on what was supposed to be my first day, was like with one arm, like sending an email to Chris. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I'm in the hospital. Like, and so he's like, oh, no problem at all. And I was like, I was so nervous about it because I didn't really know Chris at the time, know? And I was so nervous that I was like, I look like, a total flake here. I'm in the hospital. Yeah, right. But I really was, and so, he was super cool about it. I came back out, 9 days later, completely fine, got back to work, or started work. I had never even started yet,
Yeah.
And so, and so I was on CSS tricks for like a year. And then he and the other two founders of CodePen were like, we need to hire a support person. And I heard them talking about that on CodePen Radio. And I'm like, Chris, I'd like to be considered for that. And he was like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, totally. So I applied for that, and that's the rest is history. I've been there since. That was 2015, and it's whatever year it is now, and I'm still here. So.
That's awesome. So get hired, go in the hospital, success. All right. So that's how you do it.
Well, at least email from the hospital when you go to the hospital, you have to email.
Get hired by someone like Chris, who's
hired by a nice person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't recommend going to the hospital, but these things happen.
I can somewhat relate, and not exactly, but 2 weeks into a new job, I wasn't feeling well, and turns out like I thought I ate something bad, and it turned out it was appendicitis, like really acute.
Ooh,
so like kind of like about to explode. So I obviously not first day of work, but I still felt like pretty bad, like, hey, I'm full of morphine right now, and I'm not coming into work.
Yeah, there's nothing worse, because it's like you're trying to make a good impression right at the beginning, and you're like,
yeah,
I can't do anything all right now, Doctor's orders, I'm supposed to lay down.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But you just wait until I'm 100%. You'll see.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think I made the greatest first impression, but I do think I proved myself over time.
Well, you're talking about how, you kind of do a little bit of everything. And I think one of the interesting things in tech is like people kind of figure out how to manage their time, especially like remote. CodePen is remote, right? And I'm pretty sure CodePen's remote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do you kind of handle this balance of going and doing a whole bunch of different things? Like, does that ever drive you crazy? Do you enjoy being able to do a whole bunch of different things? How do you manage that?
It's yes to both. Like, yeah, it can drive you crazy, especially if you don't like schedule things, like that. So one thing that I do, and I'm lucky to be able to do this, is I keep a very strict schedule of business hours. I work Monday through Friday, and I work, it's actually 9 to 5 Central Time, because when it began, Chris was in the Midwest, but that's just what it became. And so I stick to that schedule. I don't stay long almost ever. And I also am lucky enough to have a separate room in my house for my office. Like I'm in my office. And so when I walk out of here and close the door, I ain't here anymore. I have left work, So being able to really keep things in a strict time box like that, and also in a literal physical box, like this is the office and that's all it's for, that's really helpful, because that prevents me from having work bleed over into my regular into my personal life, because it's incredibly easy for that to happen, especially when you're remote. I mean, I'm in my home, and it's very helpful to have that strict schedule. And so I come on at the same time every day, I clock out at the same time every day, and I plan out my day in terms of what I'm doing throughout the day, so that I have sections of time where I'm doing all these different things. Some of it, things like the support desk, that's a continuous flow. Like, tickets are coming in at all hours, but we try to make sure that tickets are answered within a certain time frame, but that allows for me to put them into like little bits and work through those little bits and then swap over to another job. Because I can't really effectively multitask. You can do a little bit of it, but you open yourself up to making mistakes or doing goofy things, and I just don't, I don't like that. So I like to make sure that I'm focusing on one thing at a time. And I think that's critical when you're doing something, when your job involves a ton of different hats. You literally got to switch the hat, and it's got to be a thing that switches. You can't just try to multi-tab everything and try to knock it all out, because you're just going to make yourself frustrated and stressed.
It brings up I'm kind of curious, because like, I mean, CodePen is a pretty popular site with a large amount of users. Is this support team pretty tiny, or like the employees, like, or is it like you and Chris and like one other person, or like?
So it's all of us. It's literally all of us. So there's only 7 people on the team, but it's literally all of us. So I am in charge of it, and that means that I do a lot of the frontline support, but I also assign tickets to the other members of the team. And then on Fridays, we have a support rotation where someone who isn't me is on the desk on Fridays. So but it's all of us now. People are just as likely to get a response from me as they are, from Alex or Chris, the founders. So it's the whole entire team is on it now. For a while, it was just me. In the earlier days, it was just me, but that doesn't scale. Obviously, just one person just don't scale. So it's all of us now, and it's working out. Like at first, I was nervous about that, and like I was a little concerned about creating a situation where engineers were interfacing with customers, because the reputation of engineers and customers is not that great. You know what I mean? But this team, the whole team is good at written communication, which is of course vital, not just for support, but also for communicating remotely. And so, they are all very good at written communication. They all have good manners, which, I mean, that's just a basic fundamental part of support, is just good manners and being friendly, treating the people who are sending in tickets like they're human beings, which they are, these types of things, it doesn't come natural to everybody, but luckily the team that I'm on, it came natural to them. They are good people on the support desk. So, after we experimented with it for a little while, I was like, this is actually completely fine. They're great at this. I don't have to worry. So I let the engineers talk to the customers.
I definitely agree with that, because I used to do, like, before I had a programming job, I worked in restaurants, but I also worked in internet technical support, and it's not like anybody's ever calling to say, hey, great service, thanks, bye. It's no. People are, I would say, almost all the time unhappy, and it can be tough dealing with folks, but and it was kind of funny, like, in retrospect, because this is like 20 years ago now, but like I would have coworkers that weren't good at it. Like I had one coworker who would just keep talking louder and louder if the person didn't understand what he was saying, and then I think he got suspended because it got to the point where he was like screaming at some old woman on the telephone, and it was like, so yeah, definitely composure and being thoughtful and stuff, and we kind of have to do that too. I think everybody we work with, because we work in open source, when you respond to folks, or if you're just writing something up, it's always good to reflect a little bit before you write something. So definitely.
Yeah, I feel like our team's pretty good about that. So go ahead, Marie.
It also helps to have a lot of templates. I think it's very useful, especially when you have a high volume day, that if your template is friendly for you, you don't have to pull from your personal well of friendliness. When there's a point where you will just get blown out. Like every drop of niceness that's left in you can be evaporated on a difficult day or a difficult couple of weeks, so you need to have tools in place that can be nice on your behalf when you need to hold some of your own personal niceness in, because it's like, I mean, you don't want to use it up. You need it for later. You got stuff you got to do after work, like, exist in the world without being super mean. So, you do need tools that will actually do the nice for you when, even when you can't, and that was especially useful to rely on during this past year. The pandemic was difficult. It still is difficult. It's not like it's over. Not here in the U.S. anyway. So when I had very little to draw on from my personal reserves of friendliness and niceness, I used my templates and I relied on procedure, and that really helped me. It's important. Procedure, including being kind and helpful and respecting people. You're just going by the book then. You can just use the book, go by the book, and it helps. It's important to do. Like, if anyone who's listening is putting together a support team or doing, open source support, which open source support, that's even tougher because you're not getting paid. So the entitlement that comes with open source tickets is off the scale sometimes. It is important to have tools to use, and it is worthwhile to invest time in them, because you might not think you need them right now, but wait till you do. You're gonna wish you had them.
Yeah, that's been a huge thing for us. Marie's talked to Michael Tharrington, who's on our team, who does customer support, and he's been great at just like coming up with canned responses, because he's just really good about interacting with people in a way that's like very friendly. And so we have canned responses, but then we can just kind of go off of those and like make them our own. And he does it for support, which I help a little bit with, but I've been able to use them, in our open source repo, and just kind of draw off of that and just be able to communicate with people that way. I came in to the repository when there's a lot of stuff that needed to be closed, and that's not always what people want. And being able to communicate in a way that was just kind of like, this is why we're doing this at this time, and just having this communication in place already just made that so much easier and so much nicer. Just like you said, Marie, sometimes you just need something that you have already. So I think that's great advice.
So a tool that I use for that, I've been using this one for years, is Text Expander. It's a Mac app. And what I really like about Text Expander is that it's super flexible. You can create a canned response, but then you could have like drop-down menus in it where you could select different situations that you're answering to. It has fill-in fields, all that type of stuff. So it's really useful for templated but customizable response. And so I use that every single day. It's funny because it shows a little thing where it tells you how many keystrokes it saved you. And I think it resets like after a certain period of time, because it only shows me this number that looks kind of small. That has to have saved me millions of keystrokes over the years, because you have some things have a very lengthy response or whatever, so you just want to be able to just automate these things, especially at a large volume, so it's these things are indispensable. Having reusable things, processes, and templates, it's just, you need them. They're vital.
Yeah. The templates are important too. Like it's not the same context, but in open source we have, in the forum project, we have pull request templates, issue templates and stuff, and like contributing guidelines and stuff. And this kind of helps with, it's worded, so like we don't really want folks putting up a pull request if there's no issue, or like they put in a ton of work and then we have to say sorry, we're not accepting it, because so we try to put as much information so that they don't end up in that situation. And then the other thing, it's kind of more funny, but what you were saying too about folks being entitled in open source, like we get paid to work in open source now, but like I'm a maintainer on other projects, and it doesn't happen often, but when you get somebody snarky or just rude, it's like the best way you can respond is like, looking forward to your pull request.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's always funny because it's true. Talk is cheap and it's very easy to be critical. But if you got
Yeah.
something, that you're critical about on an open source thing, fix it then. Let's see.
Yeah.
How do you make it better? Let's see what you got,
Yeah, exactly.
So it does make sense to just, kick it back to them that way because I mean, maybe they do have something. A lot of the time folks aren't necessarily great at written communication or sometimes we just don't share the same kind of social graces. So you have to kind of have a little bit of understanding of that too. It's like this person, I mean, all of last year you could apply this person is having a bad day to literally everyone's communication because we were all having a bad day for like basically all of last year. So you just kind of have to like you can't take it personally. Also, a lot of the time folks think that they are not talking to a person. They think that they're talking to a robot, or they think of especially now when you're doing things online, it's like a dissociated version of a person. It's just like I am talking to this library that is making me angry and not like a person that actually is taking care of this library, And if they stop and think about it, they'll know that's not the case, but they're not stopping and thinking about it because they're running into a problem. So, oftentimes when you're dealing with something like a support ticket or, an aggressive issue, you're dealing with someone who's having a really bad day and having a really bad time, and they just want to get to the other side of this problem with your help. Maybe they're not great at asking for it, but they still need your help. So you just gotta work through that. There's not a lot of value in like talking back. Like everybody's made a mistake where they've just like shot back at somebody, there's no value in that. It doesn't make you feel better and it sure doesn't solve the problem. So, you just got to keep a cool head.
Yeah.
I think do your best,
That's why I always just, I do it now. I'm part of the customer service and community management, but that's why I always like have just looked up to people who are in those situations all the time. And I constantly try to like pull from people who are, because it really is, it's hard sometimes. Like I can be an emotional person as far as like, I feel like they're directing at me, and you just have to kind of get out of that sense sometimes, exactly like you said, of like, these are just people maybe having a bad day, or maybe just not, understanding how to communicate. Maybe English isn't their first language and they're having to communicate this problem. There's all kinds of things like that. As someone who's living in a country where I'm still learning the language, I definitely sympathize with that. Like, I'm not mad at you. I can't say what I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And sometimes, translation will damage the intention, in the language. So if someone has written something in their native language and they translated it or you translated it, it may come across very brusque in a way that was certainly not their intention at all, or completely wrong is the other possibility. Although translation has certainly improved a whole lot, you can still certainly lose things, in translation. So.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just, you have to remember they're people and you have to remember you're a person. And like I was talking about earlier on, creating very firm boundaries in terms of time. But also I have also begun to have more of a boundary in terms of like social media. Like I've kind of stepped back from my personal Twitter and stuff like that because the lines were blurring too much. And it's just like, I just want, like, if I'm on Twitter, I just want to be like, goofy or like liking memes or whatever. And so I
like, hey, at Marie Mosley, CodePen's not working for me.
It's like, if I'm not on the clock, then tell them, not me. but it's something that it'll pull the life out of you if you don't put boundaries on these things. And like I know a lot of us in tech, like the glamorous ideal of this is my passion and I am 24/7 coffee into code type person. That ain't me. It's never been me. And I think it's worthwhile to mention that like I am happy in a tech career, but this is not my life. I love CodePen. I love the CodePen community. I love what I'm doing, and then I walk out of this room and I'm not doing it anymore. You have to preserve yourself, especially if you want to hang in for the long haul. I've been at this for 5 years. I would have burned out into a smoking crisp if I gave 100% of myself to this from for a long period of time. So I'm lucky to be able to say that. I'm lucky that I'm in an organization that allows for that, because I know that there's pressure for people to constantly be available to others, constantly be on and promoting and, building your clout and your profile. You don't always have to do it. There are other ways. There are other ways to do this, and there's other ways to contribute to the world at large. Our front end community, our developer community, without giving yourself away. So, I feel like that's something that's worth sharing. I don't see people say it a lot, because the people that think this, like me, don't say a lot because we're busy, preserving ourselves. Exactly. So I feel like it's a good time to mention that when I'm on a live stream.
No, I think that's extremely valuable. The last job I had, I was working because I was teaching people and I was with students and they were constantly pinging me on. I felt like I was just constantly always work. And exactly like you, I have boundaries now where I'm I work this time to this time. We're an async global community, so people will message us at different times, but no one's expecting us to answer them right away. I can get back in the morning, answer them, do what I want to do. I've taken just this sense of I probably because of the pandemic too this year and just everything going on, of just stepping back on a lot of these things and just being I have some other hobbies and things I want to do. I'm not going to be on this all day long. Let me have another life. And I think it is important to hear that you can do these things and you can still be in the tech world and you can still contribute stuff without having to do it 24/7 exactly like you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's the most visible. The people who are hustling hardest are the most visible, and it's great because that's how you get seen, for sure. But it's not 100% what you have to do at all times, and you can, even if you've done it for a long time, you can step back from it too. I do. I've been tech adjacent for a long time now. For some of the people who are joining CodePen, I've been doing HTML since they was in diapers. Maybe even before. So it's I've been here for a long time. I've seen a lot of things go on, and people we've lost from the community because they burned out. I can think of many people who just don't participate anymore because they gave too much. So that would be my main message. I think that I like to share the most is you got to hang on to yourself, and take care of yourself. That's so vital, and that's something that I've thought about a lot in this past year because I had to take care of myself to get through this, and it's I hope everybody's taking good care of themselves. I hope people are putting themselves as the priority because tech needs as many good people as it can get, and it needs people who can do different things and communicate in different ways. So we need to make it so that it's livable, people can actually survive personally, mentally, everything.
100%.
And I can relate to the work aspect. When I was starting off in my career, I would always be I gotta finish this, and then I would never take vacation early on when I started my career, and then one day, I mean, it's very obvious in retrospect, but it's just work's always going to be there. Even if I finish this issue or feature, there's another, it's kind of it's a what do you call the belts, in the grocery store,
or a revolving
conveyor belt or treadmill, stuff's always going to come. So it's you go on vacation, if something's super critical, somebody else is going to work on it, or if it gets put on ice, you're back, and then you just start working on it again, and then it's so it's and I don't know, I mean, it's been a while since I was a junior dev, but I just remember putting in so much time, and so many times where you probably should have just gone to bed, and just sleep on it, and I'm pretty good at that these days. I still occasionally trip up on that, but usually a good night's sleep, or you grab a shower, you go for a walk, exercise, and then you're oh yeah, that's how you fix it, so.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. Leaving out rest and taking care of yourself can just make you worse. That's the other thing. You're right. If you're working on something that's really confusing you or confounding you, you just have to take a break and just let your mind your mind will continue to puzzle on it. It might come to you in a dream or on a run or in the shower or something. Your mind will keep working. You can just let it do its thing, But you do have to let the rest of you continue to actually like exist. It's important.
Yeah. I do want to say just one thing, just for people who may be newer out there and stuff. A lot of times, I think we can come at this now because we have been doing this for a little bit while. I do want to acknowledge the fact that like when you're first trying to get into tech, a lot of times you do, whether you should or not, a lot of times people have to do like a lot, and they are doing a lot because there's just so much you don't know, right? If you don't know something, then you are constantly having to learn it. But take this as a sense of like, it doesn't always have to be like that. And even when you're in that at that moment, you don't have to like take like what Nick and Marie said, like back off and take a minute to rest, and then you'll probably progress faster than if you are just trying to dive in on everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, of course, to break into something, especially something that is very, social media oriented as a development, and especially front end development, and it's very social part of the development world.
Yeah.
And learn how to talk again. But it is extremely social. So yeah, you do need to get into the community. You need to start making a name for yourself, and that is work, and it's valuable work. And I don't, I know people need to spend time on it, but yeah, you do need to find a balance, even in the early days, even in the very beginning of the push, because you're in your early days of your career, your life also exists. So please recall that your life exists and take part in that too, because you don't want to look back and just be like, you know what I did in my 20s?
Yeah.
I wrote JavaScript.
For hours and hours.
Period.
I was tree shaking like a madman.
Even early on, like the stuff that the time that I was growing the most was when I only spent like, and not even having to do it every day, but when I only spent like an hour a day just doing something and focusing on it, because it's like anything in the world. Like if you try to spend hours focusing on, you're just not going to do it. You're going to give like your all maybe initially, and then you're just going to kind of like fizzle out. We just don't work that way. So some of us can get into a zone and work for hours, sure. But when I was just doing like an hour a day, just kind of working on a project, and then that was it, and went about my life, that was the time that I was like growing the most and learning the most, I think.
Yeah. Well, focus. That's the thing. You're able to focus, and sometimes focus is incredibly concentrated. It's like 20 minutes of focus, 40 minutes of focus, but you focused. And look what you did,
All the CodePens. We can talk about CodePen more now.
Let's talk about your CodePens. Can you?
Come
on.
Oh, there. You got a bunch of animations up there.
I gotta find your profile.
Oh, you gotta find your profile. Come on.
Now when you go onto CodePen, which I see my, your work and your training. It used to be when I went onto CodePen, I'd immediately go to my profile because that's how I like navigated everything. But now it's changed, and so you have everything right there. So I don't ever like go to my profile.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, something. It's funny. We did that. We added your work to the homepage because people just had trouble finding their work once they made it. Folks who had been using CodePen for a really long time were used to the whole, go to the profile, or then over time we introduced the dashboard, and people, got used to using the dashboard. But the fact was, we just never made it easy enough to find your work and to organize your work. And so we had the dashboard. We eventually changed the name of the dashboard to your work, just to make it completely clear. This is your work. And also a lot of folks, their preference is not necessarily to see the community work, but to just get back to what they were doing. And so that tab is something that, if that's the last tab you were on, when you come back, that's the tab you come to. And that way, whatever you were doing last, you can just get right back to it. And so that's really helped a lot of folks. I mean, for one thing, we went from somebody writing in to support needing help finding their work, every day, maybe sometimes a couple times a day, depending on how many signups, to it never happens anymore because it's right on the homepage. So, but yeah, it's funny because folks who have been in the community longer are like, what's what's this? Like, why is this here? And it's just because the pattern of how to use the site, especially because it was the same for a really long time. People just build a workflow for it, and that's how they're used to interacting with the site. When we made that change, it was a pretty big change, but the only people who were surprised by it had built a workflow on what we thought back on it was like not really an ideal workflow. We created a weird situation where people had to go to their profile page and look through these different panels, which were really more designed for other people to look at them rather than the actual person doing the work. So now with your work right up front, you can search through your work, you can jump right back into the last pen you were working on, or last whatever you're working on if you're putting together a collection. That's what I'm usually doing, is putting together collections. So it'll open it to my collection tab, because collections I build for the challenges every week. We have every month we have a challenge, which is it has an overarching theme. Yeah. Which is this month was color palettes, which was really fun to put together. And so every month we have a challenge that has an overarching theme. And the idea is to build pens that are based on the weekly prompt. So, for example, this week's prompt is monochromatic color palettes. And so we gave everybody like a starting palette to start with, but of course you can just choose your own colors too. But the idea is to use a monochromatic palette and build a pen with that. And so, every week I put together a collection of all of the best work from the challenge. And so I'm in the collection mode, just constantly just putting together just groups of pens that, people can browse through. It's like, a little mini group of pens that people can check out. So that's the thing I do the most these days when I'm like making content on CodePen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to see your stuff, Christina.
Yeah, is it okay if I load up your profile, Christina? Or yes?
Yeah, I was gonna say you do it because it's faster if you like screen share than it is for me, since your internet's faster. And then that way we can, you can look at it, but we can also talk through CodePen and kind of the stuff that's there.
Yeah, because some folks like CodePen is pretty well known, but like we do have some folks that are just starting out in the space, so they might not be as familiar with it.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I still have instructor at Lambda School. I haven't changed that.
Oh, you gotta bring that up to date.
Yeah. This is good. I'm looking at this. Because like you said, I'm pretty much just on the your work now, because a lot of this stuff I used to share constantly on CodePen, a lot of my CodePens, and kind of put myself out there, and that's how I got kind of noticed and got some jobs. Now a lot of my stuff is either private because I'm working with like companies, or they are for something specific, like a course or things. Like I'm about to do another course on LinkedIn, and so I have all my stuff in like my it's not my front stuff. So the nice thing about CodePen Pro, which I have, is that you can kind of arrange and decide like what you want on your profile page. And so this is what I would send to, I'd put it in my resume, or I'd send it just afterwards or whatever. And a lot of times, they got to see these things that I was doing. And that's how I got jobs, like working with stuff that was like, Adobe, or when I was working selectively with something called GreenSock, which is the JavaScript libraries, because I was able to share these things and kind of curate what people were seeing.
Yeah, this one, the From the Ashes one on your on your profile, that actually got me reading Octavia Butler. I had not read her before.
Oh, yeah.
Where's that one? Oh yeah.
It's down towards. I think that's my most viewed pin. If it was like one of them, it was that one. And it was like it's older code now that I would probably do different, but it still works great. And so who cares?
Cool. And
yeah, that's a cool thing. Some of these. No, go ahead, Nick.
Oh no, I finished that. I was gonna say, since we're like I loaded up the editor, maybe we could talk a bit through some of the features of CodePen as well for newer folks in the industry, perhaps.
Sure, yeah. So what we're seeing here is the CodePen Editor, which is just the 3 panels up at the top there: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what's the coolest thing I think about CodePen, especially when you're first getting started, is that as you write code, it just updates right there in the preview panel. So everything that you do that has any kind of visual aspect will show up in the preview, just as if you were, had published it to a website. So Christina's thing here, that's all SVG, right?
Yeah.
The bird,
it's
I
an
think.
SVG, so that might not be the best one to look at, but yeah it's all SVG.
Yeah, so I changed the font size on the
No,
root
I
element
mean,
here.
well,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
And there we
exactly.
go.
So as you do that, and if you were to change the background color or anything like that, that would, cool, yeah, you forked it into your account now. So when you saved it, you took from Christina's pen, all of your changes went into your fork. So now this is forked to your account. And that's another cool thing. When you find a pen on CodePen, if you like it, you can fork it into your account, and then you can play with it. Nothing happens to the original pen. That is one question that people ask us sometimes, is if they play with the code on CodePen, if it changes the original, it does not. But you can fork it, and then all of your changes come with you. The original stays exactly as it was, and then your changes go into your pen, so you have your own copy that you can work from. And so you can make all the changes you want. You can, make something completely new from it. Or, you could just kind of take it apart and learn from it, which is a really common reason for creating a fork. It's just being able to check out the code, experiment with it, and make your own thing or learn more. I think a lot of folks who like to learn by taking things apart.
Yeah, this pin actually was so Sarah Drasner has a pin where she has this like I think it's like the globe, like Earth, like exploding and doing stuff. And I forked her pin and was like trying to learn how to do what she was doing. And then I, created my own code and did I think I linked to hers in here in my thing. Actually, I think it's linked in there in my pin. If you go up in the JavaScript panel, I think if you go to the top, if you go in, it should say something about Sarah's in the pin.
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah, Estra's.
Yeah,
he's got it highlighted.
That's one of the things I did when I was first starting out. The nice thing about CodePen, just like Marie was saying, is that like all your stuff's in there. Oh, so this was a little bit different. She has, that's the one I did get it from. She has another one that I was thinking of too, but that is the one I got it from. Where it does a similar thing.
That's a good example because you have stuff the two pens are super different.
Yeah, you have all this stuff that's kind of like glowing and then kind of like explodes on its own. And I was like, hey, this is a cool idea for what I wanted to do, which happened to be a challenge at the time. I don't know if it was one of the CodePen challenges or it was just one of the challenges in the community that people were doing. But the nice thing for me with CodePen was that when I was first starting, like I said earlier, when you're first starting, you're trying to learn tech, there's just so much that you have to learn. With CodePen, you can just start dropping in your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript. You're not having to think of like all the other things that you have to, maybe bring in to get it to work. And it's just working for you right there. And then you also have all these other people with work on there that you can fork and look at and try to understand, like, how are they doing that? Let me take this apart and figure out how they're doing it. And that was the thing that really helped me with CodePen and what I really liked about the community.
Yeah,
it's really great to see that interaction happening too. We see people learning from each other, and that's always just such a cool thing. We have folks who've been part of the community for a long time, who've been sharing things for a long time, and you can see their influence come down through the cohorts of new people joining. So it's really exciting to see things built in like a recognizable style. Like this is, for example, like Anna Tudor's style. Anna Tudor is a prolific and really, really talented developer. We see people learn. So her username is the baby dino. So you could just just put that in. But she does. I mean, she's just incredible. One of the most brilliant minds I've ever come across, just generally, and her work is just extraordinary.
Usually all just CSS and like pushing CSS to these like crazy levels that you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah, she has an incredible mathematical sense and just uses the math features of CSS and even the things in HTML that can be mathematically done, and just absolute brilliance. And her work is incredibly influential in the community. We have seen over the years so many people learn from her example, and I could not be prouder to have someone that talented in our community.
Yeah. Anna has a lot of articles on CSS tricks now too, doesn't she?
Yeah. Yeah, and that it gives you insight into how this is done. I mean, these things are when I first look at them, I can never figure it out, but to get that insight, when she writes about it is really incredible. The things she's done. I mean, you could do a whole show just on her work. She's incredible.
Jay's in the chat. Jay's another one that a lot of people have seen their stuff on CodePen and been like, and then just tried to do it themselves too. I see a lot of people always on Twitter just be like, I wonder if we could do this. And Jay's like, let me figure that out, and does it.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Yeah, here's Jay's stuff.
Yes. I love that he has this branding of the little teddy bear guy. I think that's
he just
so
put
cool.
it in our chat too. He
Nice.
uploaded it into our chat
Awesome.
there.
He
was on the stream. Was it not 2 weeks ago? So he's gonna come back on at some point. We're gonna pair program and build some fun overlay for our Twitch stream.
Nice.
We have our mascot's a sloth called Sloan. So he was thinking like, hey, why don't we have the sloth do something for Dev 2? The mascot's Sloan. But Forum's the more genericized form of the community now. But so we were gonna. I think we're doing that in late or near end of April. I'm not sure, but
I think April 28th is the date for people.
Have fun. Yeah, he has such a cool profile, and he is incredibly prolific. I like almost can't keep up with how many cool things he's making.
Yeah, when Jay first started putting them just over and over and over again, that was like when I was like not putting code pins anymore, and I'd always be like, oh man, this just makes me want to do like a pin. These are always so cool, and then I just don't have time. But I love looking at Jay's stuff.
Yeah, so fun. Yeah.
The thing I like about
one, the Kit Kat clock.
The thing too about these things is, whenever people are like, yeah, CSS, whatever, or, like, all, there's that whole subsection of Twitter where they're just constantly dissing front end. So it's like, okay, well, let's see you do that, It's like,
oh, I know. I mean, there's a strange situation there because I think, again, talk is cheap. You can say what you like, but let's see what you got.
Exactly.
There's also a bit of an attitude about when people make things with CSS where it's like, what's the point of doing this with CSS? And I will tell you what the point of doing this with CSS is. The point is to see what CSS can do. Having like a mastery of CSS where you can bend it to your will and make cool things happen. It also means you can use it in the practical purposes too. Like anything you can play with, you're much more likely to be able to master in full. So play with it. Yeah, maybe it's not the most practical thing. Maybe you could certainly do this with JavaScript, whatever. So, if you want to do it with CSS, do it. CodePen is the perfect place to do it.
The funny thing about that. Go ahead, finish, Marie. And then
that's all I was just gonna say. It was just you learn that way. That's how you learn when you play with something, anything. You learn more about it. So.
Yeah, the funny thing about being in the CodePen community and seeing some of the stuff on CodePen, because I think you get that a lot when people share CodePens. Sometimes people are like, "What was the point of that?" Like you'll never. Mm-hmm. And I've seen stuff that people in the past were like, why would you ever do that? And then it becomes this thing where people are taking the code pins and they're putting them on, like they're using that kind of code. Like it's become like you see like the trends on CodePen, and then you start seeing the trends on like websites and stuff, and you're like, I saw that originally on CodePen. Like people are like, why would you do this? And I'm like, and now they're doing it on a website.
Yeah. So now you got to do it. So well, there you go. Joke's on you.
Yeah. No, that's like there's that whole trend of like spinning globes. Like Stripe has one, GitHub has one now, and they look really cool. And I'm sure that's not an easy thing to do either. But
a lot of those were on CodePen for a long time. Like people doing cool WebGL stuff.
Yeah. That's the thing. This is the place where people push the boundaries. And so, yeah, when you're pushing the boundaries, you're going to do something that's impractical. That's going to come with the territory. But then, how long is it going to be impractical? It may be the next big thing, or it might be something that over time makes a lot of sense. We don't know what's coming down the road technologically for us. We don't know how we're going to be experiencing the web in 10 years' time. But we're seeing a preview of it. We're starting to see where the ideas are moving towards because it's happening on CodePen. The things that will become normal UI, the things that will become the basics of web development are happening here. So, maybe it's not practical now. Maybe you could do it with something else, or maybe it's like really, really, really difficult for the browser to process and handle and display. But that's now. The future continues. So be ready for the future when you learn about these things in advance.
Yeah, CSS Grid, when it was like first even just people were, thinking of it, and a lot of people were on CodePen experimenting with it, seeing what they could do. It wasn't stuff that they were going to use right away because it wasn't like supported in all the browsers, but like a lot of what I learned for CSS Grid, and then like even being able to do fallbacks and things, people were sharing that on CodePen before they were like putting it on websites, which was really cool. To see.
And I have
it's great to experiment that way.
Yeah, and there's even like giving Jay a plug here, but like he had a great article about the app property that's coming in CSS, and he has this really cool project. Obviously, it only works. I think it only works in Chromium-based browsers, but it's still like I think one aspect of these things, like when you were saying like people are like, why did you do that? There's also there's definitely an artistic component to these things, and it's like there's I'm just having fun, I made a panda bear eating noodles because it's cute and it was fun, and but you are learning fundamental things about CSS.
How I learned green sock.
Exactly. Fun has value all to itself. Fun, if you did something simply for fun, good. Cool. If you shared it and other people thought it was cool and fun, nice. Some people saw a cool thing and that was fun. Like that on its own has value. Just fun. And of course, when you're having fun with something like a front end technology, you are absolutely learning something. Even if you're learning this is impractical and I won't do this again, you still learn something. So it's a learning experience no matter what.
Yeah.
No, now that I learned, awesome. SVGs, I don't go back to CSS. I was talking to Christopher Van Sant about this. Like, I don't do I started out on CodePen doing like the CSS art, and I was like, and I love the CSS art, and I love seeing it, and people are like, I got a lot of that. Why would you do it? But I learned a ton of CSS, and now that I know SVG, I'm like, I can't go back to CSS art. It takes too much time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You learned how to optimize it, but you had the fundamentals, and you had the ideas and the ability to get started and get your feet wet. And also to understand why SVG might be a better choice, because if you didn't have the time in on just doing it with a million divs or however you did it before, you wouldn't necessarily know deeply like you do. SVG is a better way for me to do this, but it is all a learning experience, and we all in tech, generally speaking, not just front end, it's a constant process of change, and you're constantly needing to learn new things, so you might as well play with them and have fun.
No, for sure. And I know I'm talking about Jay a lot now. It's not because he's in the chat. It's just but like he has.
It makes sense. He's in the chat.
Nick really wants you to come back and do our sloth, Jay.
But no, I think it's a recent one of his. He has just like the old school fans that you have in your room that rotate.
Oh yeah.
And it's got the buttons. It's a cool animation, but it's also using semantic HTML. It's using radio buttons, which are, what I mean? So it's kind of like, it ties into that's kind of like the real world as well too, it's a fine example, but it's like using valid semantic markup to literally click buttons. So it's, I don't know, that just popped in my head for some reason. So
I just shared the Twitter link to it.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's always a practical component, even when you're just playing around. There's always something practical. It wouldn't work if there was no practical component, you need something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's saying it's accessible as well. He's got, I think he's got area labels on them,
Nice.
or hidden labels, hidden
Nice.
labels. So yeah.
CodePen for me has been like, so we're talking about like kind of pushing the limit and things like that, or people seeing things. So like Dribble for designers is like CodePen for developers. I feel like front end developers. That's very like, yeah, sometimes you see insane things that developers or designers on Dribble will just like push themselves and create stuff that they know like may never go on a website, or maybe it will at some point once the technology catches up to them. But I feel like that's kind of been the similar thing for CodePen, is that sometimes when you go on, you see stuff and you're just like, what in the world, or how did you do that? And I think it's a great thing. I think it's fun. There needs to be some fun on the web, and I like that, like, it's a place where you can have fun and you can do stuff that's like out there and still learn a ton. So yeah, it's been a wonderful place to experiment.
Well, it still is.
Yeah, well,
it has been.
I was always really. It has been. It will be. I was always really excited to see. I mean, I feel like I became familiar with your work like kind of early on in your journey as a front end developer.
Yep.
I feel like you caught my eye pretty early, and so what was really great to see, and just my favorite thing to see, is someone grow and someone become a better developer by doing things on CodePen. And it's a great thing to see, in people who have been with us over the years. And now we see people coming in and joining and like starting to participate in the CodePen challenges. And I will see someone and I'll notice like, oh, this person is in for the first time. How cool. This is a really nice pen.
Yeah.
And then, maybe 4 or 5, 6 weeks later, I'm watching them just continue to grow. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Like this person is really starting to really spread their wings now and really develop really, really good skills, so it's super fun to see people emerge in that way. And I've because I've been at CodePen for years now, I've gotten to see that a lot, and it's just like my favorite thing ever. Like there are so many people who I think of who I remember their very early days, like doing things in free code camp or 100 days of code, or using the CodePen challenges. And now I see them, getting cool jobs or building amazing websites or launching their own products and stuff. And it's just like, it's the best thing ever,
Can I say one thing to bring this back to kind of community? So I feel like you've done a good job of whether you realize it or not, like bringing those people to keep coming back, because you've highlighted their pins, because you put them in the Spark, because you're doing those community things. Like I remember the first time you picked one of my pins. I remember the first pin that was picked, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And so the next week I was like, I want to do another pin, like, and it got picked, and then I was like, oh my gosh, and I feel like there's been a lot of people who have gone through the kind of like learning and doing stuff on CodePen and just being like, they'll keep doing it and keep sharing, because it was a safe space to like share, even when my code was like horrible, or my stuff wasn't that great. Like I felt like it was a safe space to still share code, and no one was like, I never really like, I think maybe I can think of once, and I'm not even sure I can think of once, of like someone just saying something negative on like one of my pins. It just wasn't something that was there in CodePen. So I think it's a nice thing for a lot of people.
That's something that we've put a lot of work into. Like that's something that is a massive priority to me, is to make sure that CodePen is a place where people feel comfortable to experiment and learn and share their work as they're learning. It's that is actually kind of like a harder part of things, because it does involve, things like, enforcing our code of conduct, which is not pleasant when we do need to enforce it. But also being open about that there is a code of conduct. Like this is important to us. This is part of our values. Like you need to behave yourself here and treat each other with respect here. And we don't tolerate it if you don't, And so that is a challenging part of community. That will always be a challenging part. And as the community grows, it becomes more challenging. But it is tremendously valuable. We had when we were planning to release the new homepage, the new homepage was like a multi-year plan in a lot of ways, because a lot of steps happened along the way. And one of the things we wanted to do was to start promoting following, so that people would be more likely to follow each other, because if you follow interesting people on CodePen, your following feed is a lot more interesting and you see a lot of cool things. And that's like a really good way to tailor what you see on CodePen. You know, if you're not particularly interested in what's trending and you want to see what's cool among the people that you're interested in their work, that's the move. You follow people and you see what you want. But before we did that, myself and Claire especially, Claire is our lead designer. We put our foot down and said, we got to build blocking before any of this. We're not going to push following until we build blocking first. And so you can't direct message on CodePen or anything like that, but you can leave comments. Okay. And we wanted to make it possible before we started to promote following to block. So before that happened, we built the entire block feature, and the block feature is not very heavily used. Great. You know, I'm glad it's not very heavily used. It's also, it doesn't make us any money. It's, you know, it doesn't move any kind of needles in terms of pro subscription, but we had to have it, and we would not do it. And, you know, we would not push forward with following until we did that. So, you know, and I credit Claire for backing me up on it that we really had to do this, you know? Okay. So it was, it's tough, you know, as a community grows to continue to focus on keeping, you know, a strong code of conduct, enforcing that code of conduct, and making it more than just some words on a page, you know, like that's the hard part. It's a hard part, you know, but it's so worthwhile because you see what happens to communities that don't, you know, if they don't take harassment seriously, if they don't take abuse seriously, look what happens. You know, I mean, sure, you know, I'm sure their shareholders don't mind too much, but the fact is the community itself is damaged, you know, and people's experience of the community is damaged, and people feel bad when they use it. So it's like, you don't want this, you know. If you have a community, you want to make sure, even if you gotta, you know, use the ban hammer, it's important. You got to do it, you know. So. That ain't the fun part, but it is part of it. It's the important part. Yeah. Shout
out to our moderators and our customer support team who handles a lot of that, because they do an excellent job on dev for that too.
You know, I guess because so much of the content is text based, I would imagine there's probably a lot of that. You know, the one thing that has I think has insulated us. Yeah, I can imagine. Especially when you consider you got the entire spectrum of coding there. It's not just front end, which front end generally is a more friendly community. I mean, I feel it's fair to say front end is a more friendly community than some other, you know, coding communities. It just kind of is, you know. But you know, when you're just talking back and forth in text, like it's very easy to pretend you know stuff when you don't know anything. I think one thing that has prevented like problems with people being, you know, mean to other developers on CodePen is like, if your profile doesn't show any good work, like, you know, talking rudely to someone about their work is like, okay, I'm supposed to like listen to you, like you haven't made anything, you know. Like, I mean, you can't accept, you don't need to accept criticism from someone who doesn't even know how to do what you're doing. And so it's less likely that someone can just kind of talk nonsense, you know. Like if they've got nothing to back it up, they're not even gonna try, you know, because it's one click to see, oh yeah, this person has never done anything. They got nothing to show.
And on the flip side of that, like I've actually, like when I was sharing my CodePens and stuff, I usually got really good feedback in the sense of like, it was people that I knew this stuff. And so then they would like say, oh yeah, you might want to consider this, or, you know, next time this might be easier for you. And I'm like, great, thank you. Because exactly like you said, I knew who they were. I could see the stuff that they were doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, they spent time to like give me some feedback on this. That's great. Like, I'm learning. And so there's that side of that community too that can be really helpful.
There's really incredible generosity in the community. You know, we have people who have been part of the community for years, and even new members who are just getting started but really know their stuff are very open with help. You know, when people, you know, one thing that I would really like to do is make it a little bit easier to highlight when people are asking for help, and that's something that we're thinking about for the future. But like when people post things, for example, on dev.to, we'll see people, you know, using your help tag, which I think is a really great idea. You know, people will post that over there and they'll get feedback, you know, and sometimes people will create a fork of their pen and show them, okay, well, like, here's how I would do it. And that's so cool to see. Or else they leave the comment over here on CodePen too. So that's a nice thing that I see, is a bit of a back and forth between our communities, and our community gets help from your community. And then we kind of, the front end communities in both places kind of merge a little bit. So that's really, really great. And then also just, on Twitter, the non-toxic part of Twitter is that people actually do help each other out, And so we do see a lot of folks sharing pens and asking questions and getting help from the community. And I mean, absolute experts. Like, sometimes the person that created the library you're having trouble with will just hop on and be like, yeah, here, or here's my pen.
GreenSock's wonderful about that.
Yes. Yeah. GreenSock does a really great job of building their community too. They have an excellent forum. And obviously they're, the GreenSock product is just like the coolest. Like, the things that people do with GreenSock, I can fill the Spark with GreenSock every week if I can do it. It is one of the most interesting libraries out there, if you ask me.
Yeah. Did you have something you want to say, Nick?
Oh no, I was gonna say I gotta take, because I haven't really done animations. I've done like basic CSS animations just because work-wise I've never really had to go that in depth, and I got a taste of what GreenSock looked like when Jay and Christina were going through it on the stream we were on a couple weeks ago, and it's pretty amazing how much you can do with such little code in JavaScript. Like, just the timeline, the tweening, like there's just like a lot, the way the API is built, it seems pretty intuitive too. So I was pretty impressed, and I gotta learn some of that stuff now. So
yeah. Well, I mean, CodePen is an awesome place to do it. They are very, very active in the community, and they've coordinated launches of new features. They've had people create pens to show off the new features and stuff, and so that's been really cool. I mean, if you look at the top 100s from last year, things like that, GreenSock is all over the place because it's so cool. Yeah.
And if you want to try their premium plugins, they're on CodePen.
They're on CodePen. You're right. They are. Yeah.
And that's with any account, right? Like, just like using the CodePen playground. Okay.
Yeah, they have their own specific CodePen that has the CD. I think it's the CDNs for all of them. Like, that you can just like take those and drop them into your CodePen, and then you can start using and trying it before you pay for the product.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's really an awesome, that's a very smart thing that they've done, is letting people really play with it and experiment with it, and also just see, the rest of the work that's been done with it. I mean, it's very obvious. This is very effective library, and you can do amazing things with it. So they've done a real good job of both of building their community and promoting their product, and CodePen is part of that.
Oh, that's awesome. I think
Steph mentioned that pen.new, which I always forget about.
Pen.new. Yeah, so that one's funny because like I was like, I don't even know if people are gonna be that excited about it, but we may as well grab it, because it was available. And the way that the .new domain or the TLD works is that you have to have it create a new thing online. So sheet.new is a Google Sheet. So because you can create something on CodePen, we're like, well, yeah, let's grab pen.new. And so we grabbed it, and people were like really excited about it. We're like, nice. So it is, and I get it because a lot of folks have a preference to just type everything, or to just mouse free type stuff. So it makes sense. You just type in pen.new and there you are, so yeah, that's a pretty new thing. I think we got that like 7 or 8 months ago or something, so it's fairly new. I never use it myself, but I know it's exciting.
Well, I
mean, I'm always on CodePen, so what am I gonna do?
I think it's a good point what Stephanie said here, because so she's talking about like, she was trying to do something, and so she'll quickly just do like pen.new to like vet, a layout idea or whatever. And that was something I use CodePen a lot for. And every job I've been at, except for Dev, because I'm not really doing code anymore that much at Dev, is that I would always get like the team to start CodePens, because that is how I would like kind of quickly, design something up real quick. If I was working with a designer and they gave me some kind of design, I'd just quickly do a CodePen and be like, is this what you're talking about? And they're like, yeah. And so we just like kind of build off from there. And it was easy to just, especially designers. So the nice thing about like not having to be like, hey, can you go to this, GitHub, break it down? Can you look at this code and stuff? Designers loved it because I could just give them a pin. Like I'd just be like, here, is this what we're talking about? And then a lot of times I could even show them quickly how they could change something if they wanted to, especially when I was doing animations. And it was just really useful in that way to just be able to quickly share, like whether you're doing like a code sandbox or like a CodePen, just those types of things are just really nice to be able to like, here you go, look at this real quick. It's much easier for everyone on the team.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I was gonna say, and I guess if you're working with a client where you don't want this work shown, you have the pro account, so you can do a private and share it, I guess, with them.
Yeah, when I was working with Adobe, all my stuff is just in private pins. I'd be like, here you go. Is this what you want?
But one cool little feature, and this one is like it's slightly obscure, but it is really handy for client work, is that you can create a private collection that includes private pens, and then you can share that private collection with whoever you'd like to share it to, and then they can, because they have access to the collection, see those private pens. So that's really handy when you're doing something with a client or things with multiple steps to it, because they are able to see it then, but it's not it's not searchable, it's not out in the community, it's not on your profile.
And for me, to brag about myself for a minute, no, just
brag away.
Picking. No, Marie's so good at like getting people's pins and like supporting them and stuff, that after a while I was like, oh, I'm working on this for a client, I need to keep this private so it doesn't get picked.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
I had one that was like picked. I'm like, oops, let me make this so, there's that side of it. If you don't want your stuff picked by Marie or someone else on the team, you're gonna want to make it private.
Well, there is one other thing. You can do if you really don't want to get picked. Now, it's a difference between picked is different. Picked is featured. But if it's not private, it can still be found in search or seen on your profile. But if you don't want something to get picked, but you're working on it and, it's cool. If you're making something cool, and especially if I follow you, just put WIP in the title. I won't pick it. if you're saying it's a work in progress, I'll skip it over. So but that's me. There's other pickers. But I do a lot of picks. But yeah, but if I follow you and you make something cool and it's public, I'm on there all day during the business day.
Yeah, man. Normally I'm cool with it. I'm just like, pick my pins, please.
It could happen at any time if you're doing something cool. You got to look out for me. I'm always looking for picks. I've got a spark to fill. I've got a feed to fill here. I want good stuff. But yeah, throw the work in progress WIP in the title, and I won't pick it. I'll leave it alone. Yeah, but anybody can still see it.
The hack that all of us did when, like, my cohort of people, which was kind of the time of the CSSR with Michael Mangialardi, I think I said that right, who did like the that was the kind of when I came in and started doing like the CodePen stuff. Is like we would all just like tweet it on Twitter, and then we would put the hashtag that he had, and then we'd also at CodePen. We'd be like, oh, maybe they'll pick it. That's what we used to do all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because the volume of tweets that we get now is like way higher. So it's no longer to the point where it's practical for us to see every single tweet, So we use TweetDeck with lots of different filters. And then that way that helps us find stuff. But realistically, what we're doing more of is just picking internally. Like it's who the team follows, it's who participates in the challenges. That's the type of stuff where we're much more likely to see stuff and actually get it picked, because the sheer volume of incoming tweets is incredible. So it's super easy for us to miss stuff if it's only on Twitter, So and we're always working harder to make sure that we're highlighting good work, because not everybody is, on social media. So part of that is a drive into, building tools for ourselves also to help us find work, that isn't necessarily gaining popularity yet, but ought to, because it's cool. So
yeah. Hey, do you want to? They might not want us to now that they put it in there, but you dropped it in our chat. Can you bring up the CodePen that's in the chat so we can just highlight someone in the community of like a CodePen they did? They did this.
Let me see it.
And it's cute, and I think We should share it.
Okay, I see it. Here, let me just open it up in a new window. Cool.
And you're on the spot now. You shared your stuff. You share your stuff in here. We're gonna show it off. Open in Chrome. Okay. It has to be opened in Chrome.
Oh, okay. I'm in Firefox. Hold on a sec. Well, I've used Chrome too. I was on Edge before. It's because we do web development. I just switch up the browsers every now and then, and also the tooling's different. So Firefox has really good.
Oh yeah, I use Firefox as my main.
Yep.
Here we go. I have a feeling my fans on my computer are gonna go. I've got this AI software to get rid of background noise, but I can see my battery. Even though my computer's plugged in, the battery's draining because I have so many things running right now. It's like Discord, Slack.
Oh my goodness.
It is a cute pen though. I'm gonna load it up. All right, here we go.
This is gonna end the whole stream.
Yeah. We're gonna go out with a bang.
The reason this is only in Chrome is because they use a newer CSS path for the animation, and that's why you have to look at it in Chrome.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see.
Again, pushing the limits of like what you can use, and right now maybe you can't use it on everything, but eventually,
it
will probably be on.
Nice.
Here,
very cute.
Let me make it bigger.
I love it.
I like the bee. Biz.
Me too.
Let me make it a little bigger. My computer just came to almost a grinding halt, so I'm just trying to get back to my Discord window. All right, my windows will switch at some point, but yeah, everything's frozen now, so I'm not gonna touch anything until the stream's over.
Well, you're not kidding. We really are going out with a bang.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, technically, I think we have hit the hour 30-minute mark, right?
That's one way to end the stream. Nick's screen froze.
Time. So yeah,
it's been a lot of fun.
For us, we had Marie Mosley from CodePen on. Marie does all the things, not all the things, but lots and lots and lots of things at CodePen. She's great with the community, supporting everyone. She does a lot of other stuff on CodePen, and if you like CodePen, haven't used it, definitely check it out. Marie, I didn't ask you in the beginning if you had any other links or anything you wanted me to share out, but if you do, let me know and I can drop it on YouTube.
Just CodePen, and this one happened to the challenges.
Yes, I did link the challenges, but I will link them again just for at the end of the chat.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I do online, CodePen.
Awesome.
I figured since you said you were backing away from social media a little, I was like, I'm not gonna plug like your Twitter or anything like that. We'll leave that be.
Yeah, no, there's not. That's a ghost town now. So you want to find me, you find me where I am, which is CodePen.
CodePen, MySpace. I don't know. Yeah. GeoCities.
Oh
for
boy,
all the
I hope I don't have a MySpace. I might have.
Angel
Fire for the old heads. That's the real one.
Yeah. I'm gonna
I have
join
a live
your
journal
web
out
ring.
there somewhere.
Cool.
All
Well,
right.
I feel like my computer is gonna melt down, so we should definitely stop the stream.
But thank you, Marie.
Well,
thank you, everyone who's on the chat today. So appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Marie.
Bye, everyone.